Okay, Gabriella, we are back again, and I think one of the an interesting conversation might be um, why why are you doing this, right? So we've had a couple of conversations now that we've recorded and that are kind of like are going out there, but the question of why you do this is actually kind of not just because you want to, right? There's a bigger story there, and it really feeds into what you're actually delivering for your clients, for the people that you work with and the organizations that you work with. So I'm just going to give you the floor. Where's a good starting point for us to understand this?
The truth of the matter is I've gone through, quite significant experiences, sometimes good, sometimes bad, more bad than good in
Mm-hmm.
terms of organizations, working practices, all sorts of different things. There's times that I will share my story, and there's things that I've put out before now that sort of talk about it. Um, but the bottom line is that some of the experiences have been really, really difficult, and I can see that they weren't necessary.
Okay.
If an organization, a company, or whatever had had some training, some understanding, I wouldn't have had to go through what I've gone through. And so it can sound a little bit kind of, I'm here to save the world, which I'm clearly not, because I can't keep my house tidy, never mind save the world. um, but I don't want other people to go through what I've gone through. I have the experience, I have knowledge, I have expertise. I don't want other people to go through what I've gone through.
In
Mm.
when you say unnecessary, in what way could they have been avoided?
They could have been avoided if organisations had an understanding of neurodiversity in the workplace, of DEI, of inclusion, of perhaps understanding some trauma responses, which can sound big, but a little bit of mental health in the workplace. Training can help that as well. And so instead of misreading what I was experiencing as perhaps laziness or unwillingness or just being difficult, and then responding by things like micromanaging or kind of lumping more things on to kind of try and get me into a better space, the responses would have been more considered, would have actually enabled me to do the things that I can do really well, instead of then dealing with the pressure of having to explain myself more. And so, if organizations have a clearer understanding, if they know how to approach these things, if they're not going, I don't even know what this stuff is. When someone says, I'm struggling with XYZ, I've realized I'm neurodivergent, I realize I've got this issue or that issue, then organizations will get the best out of people that have got really good contributions to make if they're in kind of their flow state or their kind of, their best way of working.
I mean, this wasn't, I don't think, where we intended to take the conversation, but immediately I'm kind of thinking, hang on, this then starts at recruitment level. This starts at the very start of bringing people in about the openness with these conversations and um, not just are we tick boxing exercises here, but doing something that has substance and meaning. Because if there had been an awareness and an openness to a conversation at the point in which you're employed, then presumably that may have given you opportunity to go, I said this at this point. Well, this is what that looks like. Or you may not have even got to that point because they would go, okay, we recognize that there is this need that you have in order to be spoken with in a different way, or we need to kind of like assess your quality of work in new ways, differently than maybe might have been expected. How how might that have been kind of different at the start of the process and influence you throughout?
See, even there, I've got good and bad experiences, right? So,
Right.
um, certainly understanding how to recruit in a way that's inclusive is really, really important. So, the language that's used, clarity of the role, really simple things like providing the questions for an interview beforehand, which can feel like cheating. But actually, my argument for that, and many, many people who work in this space, their argument for that is once you're working somewhere, you're onboarded, you've got support, most things aren't a surprise. So why are we trying to catch people out to interview when we're trying to assess how well they're going to work in an organization, right? So
Right.
the questions beforehand, not a problem. So fairly recently, I went for a small part-time, like a job that would just be sort of every so often that would give me some different experiences. I was given the initial interview questions in advance as soon as I asked them, no problem. Second interview, they said come half an hour early and we'll give them to you just beforehand, because I guess that, like, they didn't want me to be researching certain things, and that was absolutely fair, but it still just gave me that take a breath moment to just gather my thoughts.
Yeah.
So there are always ways of doing those things. But I would also say, as well as knowing how to bring people on board and doing it well in interview, that has to continue.
Yeah.
Because saying we're inclusive and doing things in a really inclusive way when you're interviewing somebody and then therein after it becoming a nightmare is also just a tick box, and can be more damaging, because someone comes on board thinking this is actually going to be somewhere where I'm understood, and then you're not, which is an experience I've also had. So it needs to be something that's followed all the way through.
So it's not just it's understanding it to have a holistic approach to the way that you employ somebody, not just at the beginning, the middle, or the end. And so your experience in this is more than just learned experience, right? It's not just experiences that you've had and you're taking those experiences and you're trying to help other people. You've done a lot more in this space for years, I presume.
Yeah, I've been working one way or another around safeguarding and special educational needs and then neurodiversity for 30 years. I've been delivering training for a large majority of that time in different forms, and I have lived experience of neurodiversity, of surviving abuse, of how it is in the workplace, how it impacts families. Like I have the three things that come together, which puts me in a bit of a unique position of professional and personal, and kind of how to bring that in.
Yeah.
So it makes what I'm delivering as training more grounded in my experience. And when I'm delivering training, I bring my stories in, not saying that everybody's lived experience is the same as mine, not saying this is my experience of my autism and ADHD in the workplace, and therefore that is how everyone experiences it.
Yeah.
But saying, here's a story, there's things in that story that can demonstrate the things that I'm teaching. And then that often resonates with people that I'm working with. I've always got extra time at the end when I've delivered something, because I know there's going to be conversations, people wanting to talk about something that's caught their attention. Yeah, that's my experience. People do want to talk more on a personal level because it's reached them in some way. And I think that's where you go beyond tick box as well, because there's that. I mean, I never get these sayings right, but there's that whole thing of you're not going to remember what people said, but you're going to remember how they made you feel.
Right.
And that can bring about change. And so they've got the learning, but if it becomes a felt experience or something that resonates, they're more likely to change.
And that understanding combined with empathy for the people that are their colleagues, or for the people who are the clients or customers that they kind of interact with on behalf of the business, that kind of understanding and that connection can only benefit.
Because you can't, even if you go through training, you're not going to necessarily, well, most people, unless they've got some kind of photographic memory or whatever, aren't going to walk away with an encyclopedic knowledge of everything you've taught them. But if they've got the understanding and the curiosity and the empathy, then they will go away, and when they're interacting with people, go, oh yeah, it becomes a natural thing of, I've heard something about this, I understand some of it, let's find out more. How can we help you? Because we know that providing reasonable adjustments, a listening ear, trusting someone when they say they need something, seeing things a bit differently, will lead to a conversation that means that people who have neurodivergent conditions or other needs will be able to contribute really well in an environment that's inclusive.
So that kind of learnt and felt experience kind of joining in together, actually having that impact. It's kind of like, and a lot of people, when they do training, they have understanding. A lot of people have, some people have like the lived experience, but having the experience to know how to bring those two together in a way that benefits the company that you're delivering in and connects with the individuals within that. It feels like a bit of a unique blend.
Okay, well, I'm definitely unique, right? I mean,
Yeah. So that's a really helpful kind of understanding of maybe the methodology or the thinking behind what you do and why you do it, really, which is, I think, something that is of value. And I think it does help people connect with you and the person that you are, because that's really important. That whenever I've sat in training that has been dry, and you walk out and within 2 minutes you've forgotten every bit of it because somebody's gone through a book that they've learned and they're delivering it. And but to have it personalized, to have it connected with real life experience, feels really an important way of going about, especially with subjects that are really personal for people.
And I think also when you've got that combination of lived experience, professional experience, and knowledge, you can, depending on what the training is that I'm delivering, depending on what I've discussed with the organization, what they're expecting, and then, some of the stuff I do is CPD, so you have to touch on all the points that are within it. Because I've got that sort of triple whammy of like all of the experience and the knowledge, I can listen to what's going on and kind of adjust course a little bit to suit where people are at.
Sure.
And maybe take things off in a little bit of a not an off-topic direction, but sort of tailor it to where I'm hearing the audience is at, where the people I'm training are at, and kind of bring it more to life for them, sort of in their sphere, in the questions they have. Brilliant. Or the experiences they're going through. Which, if you're just off a script, if you go off script, you're in trouble, right?
Right. Excellent. Okay, let's leave that there. That's a fantastic section. All right.
Brilliant. Thanks, Will.